Now, joining me in the studio is Marc Schulman, a columnist at Newsweek, and Ariel Osran, I-24 News Middle East correspondent. Thank you both for joining us this evening. All right, Marc, Hamas has said that they are now calling for an emergency Arab summit to discuss this. The reactions from the Arab world have been very strong, very vehemently against this. We're also hearing some people say that Trump's suggestion is really just a negotiating tactic, is thinking outside the box, is trying to change something that hasn't worked for decades and no one else has found a solution. Your thoughts?
Okay, all of that can be true at the same time. Yes, it could be a negotiating tactic. Yes, we all agree that what hasn't worked until now is not going to work now. However, no one has come up with a better solution. I think everyone would agree in Israel that if Trump's plan was possible and the Palestinians would want it and there are places they wanted to go and people want to accept them, I think we'd all think it was a great plan. However, none of those things are true, at least at the moment. What the plan has single-handedly done is unite all of the Arab world against the plan and bring back the Palestinian question even stronger right now. In other words, once the war had ended to some extent, I think the issue had gone much quieter in the Arab world, the whole issue of the Palestinians. Now it's back once again strongly, and I think that's thanks to Trump. Look, the big question in my mind is, why couldn't he have waited? Why bring this up now? Wait at least until the first stage is done. I mean, yes, the second stage too, and maybe there's a way to make it easier for Netanyahu to go ahead with the second stage. Maybe, or maybe not. We don't know. On top of which, just why do it now? We could have at least waited 3 more weeks till we hear about this wonderful plan. At least we would have known stage 1 would have been done. Right now, we don't even know if we're going to get through stage 1. I mean, it's really scary from the point of view of the hostage families and all of Israel, who's counting on the fact that we can have another Saturday where we can see the happiness in everyone's faces and see people come back. And I'm really worried that it might not happen this Saturday.
All right, Ariel, we were talking earlier that it seems like there are several messages being sort of conflated here and mixed together. There is the issue of forcefully deporting Gazans from their homes, and then there is the issue of opening up doors or possibilities for Gazans who do want to leave. Throughout the war, almost no country took any Palestinians from Gaza during the war.
They couldn't leave.
They couldn't leave.
Very beginning they could.
They were not throughout most of the war they were not allowed to leave, and most countries did not want to take them, partially because of this narrative that this is their home, and if they leave they might not be able to ever return. But now there is this talk about potentially opening doors for those who do want to leave.
Right. So we have to look at what the official Palestinian leadership is saying, as you mentioned, vehemently denying this. Hamas isn't only calling for the Arab world to unite in opposition to this, but they're also threatening, saying that this could endanger the implementation of stages 2 and 3 of the deal. Look, Israel has had previous iterations of controlling the Gaza Strip. There was recently declassified documents showing that how in 1968 the Israeli government tried to encourage the back then 200,000 Gazans to leave on their own accord. No one really took them up on that offer. Israel even offered to pay for buses to the West Bank and allow them to do so. But Gazans I'm speaking with in recent days are saying that the refusal to leave the Strip, if it were given as an option to them, lies more with the destinations of countries that are up are on the table, rather than the essence of leaving. Saying, quote, if they could leave to Europe, Canada, Australia, or America, they would certainly go there, far away from the destroyed Gaza that is not fit for living. However, if the options that are currently on the table, such as Egypt, Jordan, Somalia, Morocco, they tell me, then no, those options are bad and they will not go there. And then I even pressed, I said, is it really simply the plan, the refusal, does it lie with the plan to encourage them to leave, or the destinations? They said it's the destinations. Now, I'm not saying that this reflects the thinking among all Gazans, but this is more than one person I'm hearing this from. And I think it's very interesting to throw into the mix also when we discuss this plan that we must also say it is not viable in the immediate future, and it is also considered a war crime. Once we put those off the table
Absolutely
and we discuss,
illegal, yes.
and we discuss the viability of this, we also have to take this into consideration.
Look, since the Hamas took power 20 years ago, it's estimated 300,000 Gazans have left for various destinations all over the world, slowly. I am sure many of them would be happy to leave, as he just said, but you're not going to get them to move in one group.
Right.
That's the reality. It's not going to solve our problem. It's not going to solve the problem of Gaza right now. We don't have a plan what to do with Gaza because we never came up with a plan what to do with Gaza. And now we're stuck with Hamas in Gaza. And Trump's plan is wonderful. And he just doesn't have the power to implement it.
And Israel had the opportunity in the negotiations of the deal, but it chose not to kind of pick a horse, the PA or Hamas. And by not picking a horse, you enabled the de facto leadership of Hamas to
Get
remain
negotiations. From the beginning of the
So-
war, we didn't have a decision what we wanted to do. You don't start a war without a plan what's going to come afterwards. No one does that. Every war has a plan what's going to come afterwards. Total victory has to look like what? And we never have.
Certainly doesn't look like
We have a
this.
slogan, right? Total victory. That's all we've had is a slogan. No plan.
Right.
No plan. We end up with what we have.
Well, from the images that we've seen from the hostage releases with Hamas, with weapons and trucks and support in Gaza, that certainly does not look like victory for Israel. All right, stay with me, guys. Let's continue here. U.S. President Donald Trump created shockwaves and headlines throughout the world when he unveiled some of his unconventional plans for the future of the Middle East. While Gaza, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and Iran made it onto the list, not much was said about the future of Lebanon. But now a senior White House delegation is scheduled to visit Lebanon, headed by Morgan Ortagus, the deputy special envoy to the region, expecting to receive updates from the country's newly elected leadership on the formation of the new Lebanese government. Now, Trump and his team are set to reiterate their message that Hezbollah should not be allowed to play any significant role in the next leadership. The U.S. has been the main supporter of the Lebanese armed forces for almost 2 decades, and are expecting to discuss the army's efforts to deploy along the Israel-Lebanon border, as stated in the current ceasefire deal with Israel. Now, I want to bring into the conversation Hussein Abdul Hussein, a research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. What is the main reason for this trip? Is it really just to check in to see how is it going with the formation of the new government, or what can we really expect?
The whole ceasefire was premised on the idea that the United States will remain involved. The mechanism and enforcement of 1701 that led to this ceasefire includes the United States, of course, chairing this 5-member committee on both sides of the border. So the United States must remain involved for 1701 to be enforced and for Hezbollah to surrender its arms. I think what the Lebanese are trying to do, probably they try to sync their American visitors with details about cabinet formation. And I think the U.S. officials would be well advised to stay out of these details and focus on the big picture, which is disarming Hezbollah.
All right, so I wanted to ask you about this because the U.S. is the main supporter and funder of the Lebanese army, but how much influence do they have in the political sphere in Lebanon? This new government, you're saying the U.S. must be involved, but to a certain extent, how much do they actually have? How much influence do they have to push the political part of this discussion?
Enormous influence. The United States is probably the biggest influential player at this point. The Saudis are out of Lebanon. They've been out for a while. The French don't have much influence. Iran is beaten. So this leaves the United States with the biggest influencer of Lebanese events. Now, like I said, the trick here is that what Hezbollah will try to do is to drag the United States into a political quagmire and get things stuck in who gets which portfolio and this name or that name. And I think that'll be a big mistake if Washington gets involved in these nitty-gritty details of the Lebanese politics. I think we have to remind the Lebanese at all times that the ceasefire is not the goal by itself. The ceasefire is there for Hezbollah to get disarmed and for the IDF to be able to hand back whatever territory to a reliable partner, which should be the LAF. And of course, after all that, There should be demarcation of the border between the two sides, the 13 disputed points. And dare I say, we're probably talking about peace, but this is something that this administration will really have to squeeze the Lebanese. The word peace is still not there yet, but we can really convince the Lebanese to start debating peace.
All right. While you were speaking, we were watching images from Hezbollah training camps. A lot has changed for Hezbollah in Lebanon in the past year. Where does the organization stand right now politically in the country?
The organization is much weaker. If it's weaker militarily, then that means that it'll be weaker also on the political side. The organization is almost broke. The infrastructure of its supporters has been raised down. So Hezbollah is in a hole. And Hezbollah only let the election of President Joseph Aoun happen because Hezbollah is hoping that if the political scene starts moving, then maybe they would get money to rebuild in the south and elsewhere. So it is weak, but weak is not enough. The Lebanese must step up, and they have not stepped up yet. So we'll see what Americans can do to convince the Lebanese to step up.
All right, Hussein Abdul Hussein, thank you very much for your analysis and your insight. I want to go back now to the studio where Marc and Ariel are still with me. Ariel, we just spoke about Hezbollah's political standing right now in the country. He said weak is not enough. How do they stand militarily right now?
Militarily, they are still the leading military force in the country, even stronger than the standing army in Lebanon. I think interesting developments in the recent hours, there are ongoing clashes on the Lebanese-Syrian border, and Ahmed al-Shara, the new self-proclaimed president of Syria, has even sent reinforcements there. And so this is, I would say, the first test in the field for Hezbollah forces, but really there is no other armed faction that threatens their prominence as the leading military force, and that their weapons is what gives them the leverage politically, internally, to get their wishes in the construction of the government. It really does lie currently in the political scene what outcomes will be with the establishing of the cabinet, what role they will have moving forward in kind of giving us a sense where their future in Lebanon will be as a whole, also politically and militarily.
I think we have to look at this strategically. They're very weakened. The fact of the matter is they have no means of resupply at the moment, which is the key factor.
Well, at the moment, but...
Well, it depends. As long as Syria stays the way Syria is right now, the Syrians are not going to allow transmission of material from Iran into Lebanon, the way things stand. You know, to them, the biggest enemy is Iran. The second biggest enemy is Hezbollah in Lebanon. So at the moment, they don't have that method. The government is not going to allow them to fly things in of any significance. We won't allow it to happen at the moment. So in those ways, they're definitely weakened. But on the other hand, they pay 7 times what the Lebanese government pays to their soldiers. And that's one of the things that needs to happen. The Lebanese government has to be able to pay at least as much, or if not more, than Hezbollah pays, so they can recruit more soldiers. The biggest problem right now in deploying in the south is the Lebanese army isn't big enough. We have a problem with the size of our army. They have a much bigger problem. The army is too small to do what they said they would do in terms of the agreement. And that has to be solved, A, for our sake in terms of the border, and B, for their own sake. If the army is stronger and bigger, that by its nature means that Hezbollah is weaker.